r/Nosleep. Posted by u/HorrorMode. I'm a former police officer. There's one call my partner and I took that I'll never forget. I'm J Miles and I want to share with you a story that stuck with me for years. I joined the force many decades ago. It was my redemptive way of giving back to society. When I was younger, in my mid-20s, I committed petty crimes in a desperate attempt to fit in. The culture at the time was one that admired bad boys and having a record was cool to most people. I grew out of that. I was partnerless for some of the 911 calls I responded to, and I'm just thankful to whatever being exists out there that I had a partner for this call in particular. Our police cruiser was parked in a dark alleyway, tucked between its brick walls so as to catch speeding drivers. It was around 1 a.m. when we received the dispatch. Someone called about a woman who was walking the streets barefoot with her baby while murmuring things to herself. That's all we were told. We arrived at the scene. My partner Rob and I were on edge the moment we got there, not least because Cinder Valley was a notoriously bad neighborhood. After circling the area a few times, the woman was nowhere to be found, so we decided to park the cruiser and knock on some doors. The 911 caller was anonymous, so we weren't able to speak with them directly. Most folks were asleep at that hour and we had to settle for whoever happened to be walking the streets that night. "You see that?" said Rob. "Someone disappeared behind a wooden gate by a house and we just missed them." Rob and I jogged over to see if we could get to this person, our possible suspect. I could see folks in their homes peeking through curtains, staring curiously at two cops running around in their neighborhood. It looked like the suspect entered someone's backyard through an open gate, so we flipped on our flashlights and followed. The backyard was pitch black and we couldn't see anything that wasn't within the narrow beams of our flashlights. I noticed my partner's light was shaking mildly. "You okay?" I asked him. "I'm fine." "It's okay to be scared, man," I said, chuckling. "Fuck off." A rusty swing set moved at the wind and the trees around us sounded their leaves. My body shivered, not at the cold breeze, but at the atmosphere. If I was unsettled, I could only imagine how much more my partner was. "Excuse me, sir." The homeowner suddenly opened her backyard door. "Sorry, ma'am," I said. "We'll be off your property in no time. Didn't mean to scare you. My partner and I are looking for a woman who was reported." "Officer, I can't hear too well. Would you mind coming inside?" I went inside to speak with the homeowner while Rob continued searching the backyard. I explained that we were looking for a woman who was behaving strangely and walking around the neighborhood with a baby in hand. While talking with the homeowner, Rob screamed from outside. "You okay? What happened?" I asked. It looked as if he had witnessed a ghost appear before his very eyes, then vanish into thin air. "I saw her." "The woman? What did she look like?" "She." "Come on, Rob. Talk." He took a moment and caught his breath, with his hand over his heart. "She ran up the wall. Right in front of me. She ran up that wall, Jay. Like an animal." He pointed at the two-story house. I didn't know what to make of that. Rob didn't have a history of mental illness that I was aware of, and he certainly wasn't on drugs. I knew him, and I knew him for a comfortable amount of time to be able to say with confidence that he would never make things up, especially when it was serious, like police work. "Well," I began awkwardly, "did you see which way she went? After she climbed the wall?" "The bushes over that metal gate there," he said, flashing his light at it. "I saw them moving." With our guns drawn, we hopped over the gate and searched the next-door neighbor's property. "Wait," said Rob. "I heard you call for backup. Shouldn't we wait for them?" "No. We can do this just us two." This backyard was even bigger than the other, but it was just as dark. We aimed our flashlights at a wooden shed sitting at the corner of the yard, and before we took another step towards it, we heard someone crying. It sounded like a baby. "Please." I knocked down the door of the shed and we cleared the inside. The woman was not there. But there was a baby. A plastic one. Rob pointed his light on the ground of the shed. "The hell is this?" A mechanical baby doll that could play recorded sounds, placed there by someone for the purpose of luring people, was not something that sat right with me. Not a moment after that, our ears rang at a blood-curdling, high-pitched scream coming from the first house whose backyard we searched. As I dashed back to the other house, I noticed Rob wasn't following. He wasn't even moving. "Let's go." "What the hell are you doing?" I yelled. Rob's eyes widened as he glared at me, his mouth agape. I can't. I just can't, Jay. Sorry." I didn't have time to argue with him, So I continued on and hopped over the gate and entered the old woman's house. "What's wrong?" I asked her. "I saw her. She was right there." The old woman pointed outside to her backyard, at a spot on the ground that was just by the glass door. "She was just there. Just standing and looking at me. And I think she smiled." "Okay, which way did she?" Another scream. "Rob's." By the time I made it back over to the shed, Rob was nowhere to be found. The plastic baby was gone too. I called out for him and looked everywhere, but he was simply gone. You know, it was like this mysterious woman could smell fear. It's something she seemed to prey on, and Rob had plenty of it that night. When backup finally arrived, I explained to my higher-ups at least a few hundred times what had transpired. This all took place decades ago, and Rob hasn't been found since. It's a cold case. When I think back on this night, it shivers my spine like nothing else. That mysterious woman, she was playing a game with the two of us, and it feels like she won from experience. I'm not even sure why I'm still referring to her as a woman, as a human being. Because if Rob's description of her is any indication, she was something else. A full year passed by and I went through different partners. I was stationed in the same city, and sometimes my new partner John and I had to report to calls that came from Cinder Valley. Eventually, I almost forgot about it all. But I never forgot Rob, wherever he was. Dead or alive. That didn't last long. One night, while sitting in our cruiser, John and I received a dispatch. It seemed like another ordinary call, until the operator mentioned something about a woman talking to herself on the street, with a crying baby in hand. The next story of this video posted by u/HorrorMode. I just had a horrifying conversation with my friend. He revealed something awful to me. "What the hell does that mean?" I asked Hayden, wearing a confused face. "You know," he began his reply, "purple vibes. When the sky is all purple looking. It gives me this strange sort of feeling, you know?" I tucked my hands into my navy blue sweater and shifted my head forward as we proceeded on the boardwalk. "Whatever you say, man." The boardwalk was the place to be. Everyone, young and old, would come here to enjoy the view, swim in the ocean, ride the Ferris wheel, have some popcorn and hot dogs, and much more. On either side of the boardwalk, there were storefronts sporting neon lights of all colors that read, "Open, food, face paint, tattoos," and so on. The atmosphere was warm and dampened our t-shirts. It simultaneously introduced our nostrils to the odors of the beach as well as those salty French fries. We continued walking down a mostly desolate boardwalk, as it was getting late and folks began making their way back home. "Things have been pretty lame without you. Lately, all I've been doing is school," I said, still looking forward. I snatched a look at the ocean. The rushing yet peaceful sounds of waves filled each gap of silence in our conversation. "Yeah, sorry. Nothing I can do about that. I can only visit this place during certain times," he replied. "I'd say I understand, but I don't," I said with a brief chuckle. "Hey!" I quickly pointed at an ice cream store by the corner of the boardwalk. "Tommy's Ice Cream." We made our way towards the mini ice cream shop while still conversing. "Anyway," I said, "why'd you bring me here again?" He glared at me. His facial expression changed from calm and peaceful to afraid and worried. Then he turned his head forward again, looking down as we walked towards the shop. "You'll see." We waited in the ice cream line for a few minutes, Aiden seeming more and more worried as we inched closer to the counter. "What are you getting?" I asked. But I knew exactly what he was going to order. Chocolate is his favorite. "Strawberry," he replied. That surprised me. The line moved on and it was finally our turn to order. I went first. "I'll take 2 scoops of vanilla in a cup, please." I peeked over the blue, wooden counter like an excited sugar-infused child, observing as the employee made my order. I looked back at my friend who was staring into the distance, seemingly admiring the ocean again. "Aiden?" "Huh?" he uttered back, barely turning his head to look at me. "Never mind," I replied with a confused face, turning my attention back to the employee. "Just get him the same but strawberry. Thanks." Aiden was still gazing into the distance, his back to the ice cream shop. It's like he refused to look at it for some reason. "Isn't that crazy, Tim? Look at the sky. Look at its colors." "Yeah, that does look pretty cool, actually," I replied. "You were right." We sat ourselves on a concrete bench and faced the beach. I held his ice cream for him. "Tim," he said, "I might not see you again for a while." There was a moment of silence. And then he looked straight at me, slightly turning his body on the bench. "So, I want to tell you this right now. I want to tell you that." I interrupted him. "Listen, Aiden, I know," I began. "You want to tell me that what happened to you that night was not my fault, right? You don't have to repeat that again. You went out somewhere, but you never returned. You went missing. The police never found your body, but we all knew. We all knew you were gone. I could have talked you out of taking your life if I was there. If I had just replied yes when you asked if I wanted to come, then you would still be here. But no matter what happened to you that night, I could have at least tried to help you if I was there, sitting in the passenger seat. It might have made a difference." Before he could get a word in, I continued my rant. "You know, some people think I've lost my mind, mainly close friends and family members. Every time I tell them that I can still see you and even talk to you from time to time, they look at me like I'm crazy. Can you believe that? And yet, here you." "Tim." He interrupted me. "I brought you here to tell you something. Okay?" I nodded slowly. "Okay. What is it, Aiden?" "I didn't go missing. I didn't kill myself." I looked away and squinted my eyes at the ground, shocked and confused. Then I looked up at Aiden, who was now standing. What? Then what happened to you that night?" "Your ice cream is melting." "Huh?" I replied, looking down at my hands, dripping with strawberry ice cream onto the ground, looking like blood. "Who cares about that? What were you gonna say?" He turned his head away and stared intensely at a man in the distance. "That employee you were talking to, the one who took your order." "Why the hell are we still talking about the ice cream?" I interrupted him. "What do you want to tell me? Why are we even he?" "He's my murderer."